I read an article in the German Aero magazine where they talked about locations in the 50s where they didn't get the hang of it, and Bern was mentioned there. I was insecure about if I could pull off like this modern building and everything. It's a case study where you can see even the Germans, when they try to master plan everything, it doesn't function.
Well, it's always good when the German master plans don't quite work out. No, but an interesting point actually, as you say. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Bongocast, the community talk here on the channel, where I invite you guys from the community to have a voice and talk about topics that interest us here in the Scale community. That of course means that you are welcome to become a guest if you feel like you have something you can contribute with, or if you have any ideas on topics that we could discuss here on the podcast, then you are also most welcome to share that with me, either by simply commenting down below or sending me an email. But for today's topic, I want to talk about, well, architecture. Because if one thing is connecting all of our airport setups, then it is architecture. The way we design our terminals, the way we are placing them, and what better guest to have to talk about airport models and architecture than someone who doesn't just have an airport model set up himself, but is actually studying architecture. So it is now my absolute pleasure to have a wonderful guest here today in this podcast. It is Bernie, or Niklas. You might know him as Bern International Airport on Instagram. To summarize him in my words, at least, I'd say when we look at his account, it is quality over quantity. It's not like you're posting every day, but when you do, you usually have quite nice images. But why did you choose Switzerland as your main location?
I know it's quite a funny question why I chose it. I mean, I'm German, first of all. I know many of you guys think I'm Swiss, so I'm not. I'm actually German. I think it was back in 2017 when I first started my Instagram account. I looked at locations all over Europe, so where was like a possibility to slot in a kind of medium-sized airport. And I read an article in the German Aero magazine where they talked about locations in the 50s where they didn't get the hang of it, and Bern was mentioned there. And so I was like, why not Bern? Coincidentally, I already had like 3 Swiss planes models, so I went for it. And this is how I became Bernie. Choose the location.
Good. Yeah, I mean, we often choose locations not specifically on the geographical area where we are from or spend our time, but on things like you say, like, okay, you pick up something from history maybe or any other. I mean, I have my PHL airport set up, and I mean, I've never lived in the US, but there were just other factors that played in. Now, you have a strong interest in aviation, obviously, in also airport design specifically, and now you're studying architecture. So did your fascination for aviation and airports lead you to architecture, or did your passion for architecture lead you towards airports and aviation?
I mean, it was a combination. So first of all, I think was the love for aviation. So it started when I was like very little, 5 years around this. My dad flew quite oftenly, and we flew as a whole family. We flew a lot, and because my father was a frequent flyer, he like always got like these models from the airlines when you remember, and so on and so on. And so I was fascinated with aviation from a young age, and just because I was often on airplanes, standing on airport windows was one of my favorite occasions, or hobbies at airports. So and from then on, I think I didn't actively collect models or something like that. It was like in the later parts. And when it came to the question, what should I study after graduation? I also had a strong interest in like city building and general. I was kind of the creative guy in school, so I was in a special arts school where we also got taught and explored the field of architecture. And there I noticed that I was fascinated by it, just not the design, but everything how a building works. And so I was like, okay, and I gave it a try. And I was insecure about if I could pull off like this model building and everything. And I so I built a few models for my airports, tested out if I actually could really do model building. And with the airport model buildings, I got the confidence to like say, okay, now I got every field covered. So I like technical stuff. I like the design stuff with the creativity. And I also like this craftsmanship you have to do to like design the terminal. So yes, I first aviation, then architecture. And I mean, I always was interested in airports. So in their buildings mainly. So it was a match made in heaven, I would say.
Very cool. I can relate to, as you said, at a very young age, being in a family, traveling a lot, often coming to the airports, having a dad maybe coming home with one or two
Yeah.
models every now and then. I did that myself, and I remember I was always very, especially when I was much younger, I was very fascinated by the ability of both my dad and my older brother, because they could actually tell what aircraft types were at the airport. And I mean, for me, they were just planes. I couldn't say, oh, this is an Airbus or this is a Boeing, or even go more into detail, say this is a 737. I had no idea. Just this is a plane. That's cool. And they could actually say all these things. I was, how can they even how can they figure out what is what? But they could that, and that probably triggered something in me. But what is it specifically about airport designs that fascinates you?
I think we have to go way to the beginning. So in the airport history. So you have this, okay, so what fascinates me is how these airports, they don't grow linear. So like you have like buildings and they have certain plans and they expand on them. So and airports, when you go on satellite pictures and scroll 2 times, you see like they go through many iterations, many different times, many different design periods. Like you have these airports which combine so many design philosophies, which is really interesting. A few of them you can mention is Miami International Airport. Like you have like this, you can still see the 60s jet set terminal and then everything they added on over the years. So like there are so many different types of terminals. You have the one where you have the people mover where you can go to the far end of the terminal, and then you have like a satellite building, and you have a high-tech one on which is now the international terminal. I don't know, but in general, this airport, it's I just love to go on Google Earth and see the timeline and just how they evolve, and it's so interesting to see like that they have constantly to adapt. Like many modern buildings, they have a life cycle. After they are used by one owner, they are mostly torn down in most parts of the world. And in airports are different. You don't want this major disruptions by construction. So you try to add on and piece something together. And it's very interesting because you like see the time and how it grows. And it's just very interesting because like they constantly have to evolve and get bigger. And it's an interesting harmony of different buildings. So
I mean, you do kind of say an airport is never finished, and I guess that's pretty much
yeah.
true. Although I would say, for me at least, how I notice things, I perhaps see a bit of a shift. Like this, as you mentioned, you have an airport maybe started, let's say, in the 50s, and then it has grown over the decades and changed. Some parts have been removed, some things have been renewed, some things have been added, as you say. But now we, for example, see across the world, in not so much in the western parts of the world, but more towards Asia, for example, where you then get these new mega constructions where they kind of actually, where you could actually maybe argue, yes, an airport is finished at some point because they kind of just build everything at once.
I mean, let's take Hong Kong, the new one, Kok, it's called, I think, as an example. You have like this huge facility built in the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s. This was like when the English gave it back to the Chinese. And Norman Foster designed the terminal. It was a huge facility back at the time. I think the biggest terminal in the world. And now they already ran in capacity issues. So they are now expanding. I don't know if you read the articles or see it somewhere. They are now building a separate new island again next to the old one, where they again build a huge facility on it. So even the mega structures we see today, they are not finished definitively. And you can go back to the past, and there are so many mega complexes and terminals. Frankfurt, the Terminal 1 was believed to like serve until the 2000s with just minor, adjustments. And yeah, we have this clusterfuck of terminals there. So never mentioned, but I know we both don't like this airport. But I mean, it's an interesting case study where you can see even the Germans, when they try to master plan everything, it doesn't function every time.
Well, it's always good when the German master plans don't quite work out. No, but an interesting point, actually, as you say, even the mega projects, these huge new airports that are being constructed around, even they kind of aren't finished. They also then have to expand at some point. So it's perhaps just changed that everything just gets on a bigger scale nowadays. But maybe let's move over to a little bit more towards the model aviation side of things. What, in your opinion, are maybe neglected areas when we look at people's setups? Other things where when you look at it from both your fascination of aviation, but also, of course, as an architect, think, okay, this is actually maybe an area that most model airport setups kind of forget, or maybe don't shine as much a light on as they perhaps should.
First of all, are we only talking scale 500, or are we also taking into consideration 400?
No, in general,
because,
I mean, you have lovely scale 500 setups, but we also have fantastic 400 scales. We even have some really lovely scale 200 setups. I don't know how people manage to have space for that, but there are some really, really lovely setups out there as well.
Yeah, that is what I'm talking about. Because if we talk scale 500, I would say it's sad because we don't see so many setups in South America or in Asia, because like Herpa doesn't produce these models and the other manufacturers don't so heavily. So, but 400 scale, there are lovely setups for Asia and South America. I think what's a bit sad is, actually, it's funny because coming from a German, but the French airports, they are underrated because it's an odd take, but you have like Paris and Marseille, which are like the big ones, and Nizza, but they have many interestingly small regional airports with so many crazy designs, and you just have to type them in and just look at them. And it's interesting that we don't see like more of French regional airports or recreations of them. But what is also really sad is that we like don't have so much African airports, or even in the Far East, not Far East, but like Saudi Arabia or the mega structures we have there in like Dubai, Doha. They are not reproduced or tried to replicate because like there isn't the demand. But I would love to see like actually take on a realistic terminal of Doha or in of the Dubai one, but they are too complex to build. So many people just choose like the modular buildings in America and in Europe and so on and so forth. And if I think country, I think South Africa is underrated. Like you have Johannesburg, the airport is very interesting.
Why is South Africa or Johannesburg, the airport there, so interesting architecture-wise, for example?
It's the terminal is quite odd. It's not like your standard terminal. Like they have 3 gates where they have like it's hard to describe for me in English, but like you have these overhanging structures which are more like suspended from above, where you have the boarding areas. So you can really, it's like a triangular shape where you can walk in them and look onto the aircraft. So it's an interesting design feature we don't see often. And the terminal looks very futuristic. So I'm not as deeply, I don't have so much knowledge about like these airports, but I have seen many images where I think like, it's an interesting take on airports. Like when it comes to the West, we have like, I think especially in the USA, there's now a lack of creativity in the airport design. It's mostly we have modules, try to arrange them and have like the most efficient layout we can. And even look at Europe. So Munich is just building a satellite which looks like exactly Terminal 2, which is like only 2000. So it's architectural, not that interesting.
So, but that one thing is, of course, the perhaps lack of creativity in real life. The other thing is
Yeah,
then
yeah,
when we come to modeling. Could that also be down to perhaps when it comes to modeling? I mean, we have some standard kind of buildings from Harper Wings. Some of them are easier to get their hands on than others. But there are some paper cut versions now also, of course, where we get a few different setups here and there, both fantasy wise and from real life. But is it perhaps also maybe a little bit down to perhaps many collectors struggling to find the right materials when they build it? I mean, I can only speak from my experience. When I first started off, I got the Harper basic set, I think it's called, or standard set or something like that. So not creative in any way, but that was basically how I could start off. I got a custom model, a terminal built that was made out of wood. I was really happy with it at the time. Of course, since then things have moved on. So nowadays I would want something better. Then I started making my Philadelphia setup, where I tried building something out of mostly cardboard and paper. And then since then, I have gotten some terminal buildings made by Henry X Airport, which are really fantastic, really super detailed. But when I then tried to expand my Philadelphia setup, I kind of refurbished one of the old terminals I had built, where I then started using, also again, paper and cardboard, but also tried to use some acrylic plastic parts. But in that process, I must also admit, I really struggled in figuring out, well, what materials should I actually use? What will work good? What can I use to make certain details of an airport? Surely you have more knowledge there, since you are also, for your studies, becoming an architect, regular building stuff.
I think it's because it's really complex to build something from scraps. So you need the right glue, you need the right material, the right cutters. I mean, I have 4 different cutters for just with the same cut for the same materials, and every one handles differently. And I can totally understand that you don't have the money, or just don't want to invest into the tools you have. But if you know them, then it's pretty easy. So I mean, I can give some of my tips. I mean, it isn't sponsored or anything. It's just my honest take. So for glue, it got recommended to me too, and I'm using it since then. So there's this Fala laser cut glue. It has a yellow badge on it, and it's perfect because you can do everything with it, and like it has a very fine distribution. So when you are building small models, you can try, because when you have glue, like most of the times you see big glue lines or something like that, so it can get really precise.
And that works on all material or only specific materials?
So I mean, wood it doesn't work on wood,
okay.
But I think you won't be building wood terminals. So massive wood terminals are not so good because like wood is expanding with the climate, sure, and exposure to sunlight, just not the right material. You can build it, surely, if you have the knowledge. And if I would recommend materials, I would say gray chipboard, I believe it's called in English. For the Germans, it's Graupappe. So it's a good material if you want to build transparent models, because like it has like this grayish beton-like look, and in combination with like thin acrylic glass, so thin acrylic plates, very thin ones. I believe like 0.5 millimeter or so, and then you need a acrylic cutter. So if you want to build transparent models, gray chipboard and very thin acrylic glass, it's perfect. And you can even try to recreate like these glass housings. I don't know how they call them in English, but you can see them everywhere. These like lines, vertical and horizontal lines on the glass, so you can try to recreate them. You see them on my building often. So, and for transparent building, gray chipboard is perfectly fine. It doesn't yellow with sunlight, something like that. And if you want to build simple, not transparent models, there's like binders board or solid board. It's called Pinpat in German again. So it's very easy to cut. You get many different thickness of the material, and you can really adjust to how your skill is. So if you want to go into detail, you can then take the thinner one or the thicker one if you have massive buildings. And I mean, just try it out.
But that's all things you can do by hand. You don't really need, I mean, apart from maybe from having some cutting tools, but you don't need to have machinery to laser cutting or something.
No, I mean, I'm still not at the part where we are going into the workshop and laser cut something. So in my studies currently, it's still everything doing by hand, and like my faculty like wants that we actually appreciate the craftsmanship that like goes into it, and just don't like give them files and say like print it out. So
no, but it makes it also more accessible. For someone maybe not going into architecture studies, that they can actually do something with their hands. Of course, you need the right tools, but a few cutting tools. I mean, that should be, something that everyone can find. And then having these materials, that you can actually create something that looks halfway decent.
Just one good cutter and a few good materials, and then just build it. I mean, it was to approach my first building. I think it was. Yeah, I can send you a picture where you can see it. But like, it was my very first building, and it's from a plastic PVC material. I don't know exactly. So it was complicated to build, and I just sat there and tried out building it when I wasn't in architecture, when I was still in school, and it worked out pretty fine for my first try. So really just try it. It isn't rocket science. And it honestly, when you see it in the pictures, it adds to your diorama when you have like this custom built model only you have. So.
And of course, with everything in life, there is a learning curve to things.
Yes.
But it is worth spending some time. And I mean, even I'm really not an expert in it, but when I just look at my projects, like the first buildings I made for Philadelphia, and then when I refurbished one, like already there, I could see like, okay, now I had actually tried out some techniques which I didn't know about when I first built it, and I could then use that and in my world improve on the setup. I let other people judge if I really managed to improve it, but it was a fun process. So spend some time, try things out, and yeah, you will be really happy with the first thing, and then maybe a few years later look back at it and think, how could I build it like this? And then you make it new, and it is even better. When we look at airports, airport setups, model airports, and I myself have been very much falling into this trap of basically focusing most, if not all, of my efforts onto the air side. But especially when I extended my Philadelphia setup, I really wanted to put some, perhaps not enough space, but some space towards land side, because I really thought that it adds a lot to the setup. How is your approach there, airside versus landside?
For my models speaking, I'm not a good example because I focus more on the air side. I mean, I have a few pictures showing my land side of my big diorama, but it isn't as highly detailed as the main side. So, I mean, you really have to see. So how is your setup? How is your plate? How is your terminal arranged? And what's really cool is when you like see the ramps they are now building to the airport. So this is a really cool detail if you want to add them. So that's certainly high on my list on things I want to do when I have the time again. And
so that's like the drop-off zones, for example, in front of a terminal or something. Yeah, that you can have some really complex structures there in real life, which can be complicated to build, but look nice.
I mean, the landside buildings are even more complicated to get your hands on. So, I mean, not everybody is capable of building a parking garage, or the ones Herber produced. When were they? 2010 or so? I don't know. They are rare. So
the garage, no, I think they're actually even older. I think the first garages were marketed in the 90s, but they haven't sold them in at least a decade, if not two.
Which is really a pity because, like, I mean, airport buildings, I totally get it that you put time into them, designing them, and so on and so forth. And the whole landside, they are just parking garages and like corporate buildings, so not like interesting stuff, mostly cubes. And I totally get that. Don't many people build landsides, but if they invest in landsides, there are so many awesome airport setups. I don't know the names of these two guys, but I think you know them. One is Renuya de Basca. I don't know it, but he has like this,
or something like yeah.
Yeah,
I think we both butchered
like
his name. Apologies.
Apologies, but honest mate, awesome airport. I mean, the details are great. You see like all these. He even has a beach and like put sea onto it and like the cliffs, and so when you have it, it's awesome for your diorama because it adds so much. Just not seeing tarmac or tower terminal or landing strips, so on. So try it out when you can, when you have the money, when you have the place, especially because not everybody has like this huge base to get like landside. But if you do it and you get it perfectly right, or even just right, it's awesome. So high on my list to build one where I have landside. So.
Very good. Are you working on something, some new setup, or further improving the setup you have right now?
That's a good question, and it's one that's bothered me for a long time. And when you build everything for your studies, you build them, and when you get home and are finished with your project, you're like, nah, I'm relaxing a bit. So I have plans, and I already cut it out, new parts for a new expansion of my terminal in Bern. I mean, plans and everything are completely through, and I designed it on my laptop over here, and it's just a matter of when I build them. And last weekend, actually, I dusted off an old plate I painted in 2023, I believe I painted it, and I want to build the second iteration of my Kiel diorama, so back to the roots, and try to like build an interesting landside and have like a tiny terminal and a medium-sized terminal. I'm trying to combine like Sylt airport and like the one in Rostock, so that you have like a combination of German sea airports. So still in the making, will take very long time. So when I have time, I will work on it, but it is like an on-off work, so no major setups yet. Yeah,
no worries. I mean,
basically,
take your time. I mean, from my projects, they always take way longer than they actually should, but it is a hobby after all, and it is our free spare time. So we should also only work on it when we're actually feeling motivated, because that's, I think, where then you actually succeed the most, if you are motivated and then spend your time with it, and rather than forcing yourself to do something because you set yourself an artificial deadline. Well, Bernie, thank you so much for taking the time to enlighten us a little bit on the fascinating world of architecture and around airports and aviation. It was a pleasure having you here in the show, and perhaps another time, sometime in the future.
Hopefully I will be back in the future. Let's see. And maybe I will reveal a new setup in the near future. Hopefully, I don't know. I will try to work on it. So
we look forward to it.
At least we have Philadelphia.
Very good. Thank you so much, Bernie. And see you then sometime in the future in a new podcast. So once more, thank you very much to Niklas, or Bernie as I like to call him, or Bern International Airport, as you probably know him as from Instagram. I think really interesting to get the perspective of someone who is studying architecture and combines this with his big passion for the aviation world, which we of course are also sharing. Now, if you feel like you have a topic that you really are burning for and you want to share with the community, then you can do so by becoming a guest of this podcast, or you can also just share if you have any ideas on topics that we should discuss with our guests here on the podcast. You can do so by leaving a comment down below, or of course send me an email and I'll have a look at it, I promise. Now with that, we have reached the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening, watching, or both. If you like this type of content, you are of course most welcome to leave a like. If you are new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, thanks so much again for watching and listening. I'm checking out, and bye.